Our next presentation features Jeffrey Gingold. Jeffrey is an internationally acclaimed author, joining us all the way from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He virtually sat down with our education manager, Kelsey Morrow, earlier this month to share some practical strategies for managing cognitive decline. I'll let Kelsey take it from here.
The next presentation features Jeffrey Gingold, an outspoken advocate on MS and cognitive disability. Jeffrey is internationally acclaimed author of the award-winning book, Facing the Cognitive Challenges of Multiple Sclerosis, 2nd edition, and Mental Sharpening Stones, Manage the Cognitive Challenges of Multiple Sclerosis. Jeffrey was diagnosed with MS in 1996 and continues to author numerous articles for US and international publications. Jeffrey has been a guest on the Montel Williams Show, NPR, numerous webcasts, and national talk radio shows. He was inducted into the 2010 and 2012 National MS Society Hall of Fame and has spoken and been interviewed worldwide regarding the MS cognition topic. In 2014, his first MS book was translated into Polish, and in 2015, his second book was published in Dutch. Jeffrey donates 100% of his royalties from his MS publications directly to MS research and education. He enjoys ice speed skating and spending time with his wife, Terry, and 2 adorable daughters, Lauren and Meredith. Jeffrey is joining us remotely all the way from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Jeffrey, thank you for taking the time today to talk with us about such an important topic. I'll hand it over to you.
And thank you for inviting me to share my thoughts on the Broncos football season. Oh no, that was the other conversation. Maybe later. I have a question for you. Seriously, how do you, or how does anyone identify an MS person, a person with MS who has cognitive difficulties? The answer is you can't just by looking at them. It's sort of like optic neuritis, I've always thought. That was one of my first MS symptoms, optic neuritis. And the only part about it that I liked is that you can't tell by looking at me which eye I can clearly see out of and which one is the problem. It's sort of invisible. So can cognitive symptoms be invisible, stealth, whatever word you like. One of my fundamental beliefs in treating MS when there are cognitive concerns is that every person with MS should have the expectation of a cognitive assessment and that it should be part of their ongoing MS workup. Not because I say so, but because the informed worldwide MS medical community says so. The research is out there and it's overwhelming. In the beginning of the diagnosis of MS, people with MS do not realize that their MS-related cognitive deficits will be much more fundamental in how the disease impacts their life, rather than wondering about, will I not be able to run someday? That's another issue. But the cognitive concerns will come up probably faster in varying degrees. Cognitive concerns affect a majority of people with MS, most of us. So be proactive with your cognitive concerns and expect the same from your medical providers. I was asked to expand upon the last 5 points from my last presentation was in 2019. So I'm doing that now. My suggestions are not the only or the best ways to cope with cognitive challenges. There are ways that have worked for me. I don't own them. I openly share them with you. People with MS are encouraged to find what works for them, and if it's successful, then pass it on to others. Feel free to share. Here we go. Number one, have a recorded daily structure. This is merely an updated list of what you need to accomplish that day. It could be scheduled items, including appointments, things to do like people to pick up, or if you're going to be picked up, and places to go along with daily tasks and chores. I find that crossing them off a list is very empowering. Even regular exercise should be scheduled, and the time for that should be respected by everyone. If you tell them that that's what you're doing, it's too easy to skip exercise, and I think it's doubly hard to make up for it. I also believe there probably isn't an app out there to exercise for you just by clicking a button. So when you schedule it, stick with it and commit to it like any other appointment that you have. Number two, schedule physical and mental tasks to your varying energy levels throughout the day and evening. Physically, for example, I ask myself, when do I have the best energy to handle stairs and doing the laundry, or maybe mowing the lawn, vacuuming, or exercise, as I talked about? When do I have the fuel, the physical fuel, and I don't allow myself to be distracted by the telephone ringing because I know the fuel is finite. It is only going to last so long, and if I give it to some other task, then I won't finish the physical task that I was talking about. Mentally, you have to ask yourself, I do, when are you best focused, maybe, for bills, returning emails, returning telephone calls, writing a letter, maybe writing a book? Connect the energy that you have to the task and then schedule it. It's an appointment with yourself and a task. Keep the appointment. For example, I want to schedule important conversation details when I'm clearest and not feeling foggy. Like I like to schedule when I feel sharpest, I like to schedule medical appointments or a tax discussion. Anything that is filled with vital information, do it at a moment of mental strength, not mental fatigue. If it's important, maybe have someone with you to take notes so you don't miss things and wonder what was said later. I have learned to never decide life-changing decisions when I'm mentally fatigued. Never. Perhaps it's not the best time when you're mentally fatigued to buy a car or maybe try to purchase a house, put an offer down, deal with heavy finances, or think about or commit to retirement, or maybe getting another kitty in the house. Maybe. We'll talk about that later too. Number three, I find it's useful to have routines for placement of items for yourself and everyone in your home. This is more important than locating where's the TV remote or the football schedule. Maybe. If you have one, think about this. If you have a cat, and if you have one specific place for the cat litter and food, then why not for other equally important items for yourself? With my cognitive recall delays, putting something down somewhere and believing that I'll find it later magically, that's a mistake. If I didn't put it down in the location that I know I typically keep things, Sometimes it disappears. It's just not, my recall is not dependable. And I know that. I suggest perhaps you should decide where you want to keep your extra keys, your extra house keys, extra car keys. Where do you want to keep the checkbook with the pile of bills? Where do you keep your tools? Where do you keep your tax information, deductions, all of those records in a certain spot? Where do you keep your medication? Where do you keep your doctor's contact information? That's as important as where do you keep your phone and your chargers, I suggest. It's nice if everyone in your house knows where you like to keep things and they respect that by returning items to where everyone should know that that item is typically found. Avoid the game of, hey, did anyone see where the thing went? It was somewhere, I forgot where I put. Commit to where these things are going to be located, and you can talk about other things. Number 4, reduce, I suggest, multitasking. This is about focusing on one thing at a time. This is a skill, I believe, and it may take time to unravel years of plate spinning. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go to YouTube, look up Ed Sullivan and plate spinning, and you will see an example of what you don't want your days to look like. You don't want to be that plate spinning guy that you'll see in the YouTube video. Ed Sullivan, plate spinning, you'll find it. It's not about dumping obligations. It's a focus with an order, backed up frequently by scratch notes to remember the next task, because while you're focused on one thing, you may forget what's next. I always have little notes all over the place, and people in my house know, don't touch Daddy's notes. Don't move his things unless you tell him. So I don't have to go chase him down. MS cognitive challenges and dealing with them should be about one thing at a time. It should not be about trying to juggle several lit tiki torches all at the same time. For me, it's easier to do fewer things reliably rather than fail randomly. I know that my days of typing while listening to one conversation and maybe picking up another one on the telephone, those days are over. It's part of knowing my MS limits, and it may be part of you acknowledging any limits that you have. I have found that MS life has far less stress when you set your priorities and stick with them. I ask folks to be patient with me. I write a list of to-do items, I prioritize them, and then I do them one at a time. It's like trying to hit a nail into a piece of wood. It's easier to do one at a time and finish pounding that one nail all the way down and then move on, rather than start 6 different nails and move around randomly playing whack-a-mole, hitting them, and you don't know where you are, one at a time. And that's how I focus. Consider it for yourself what's best for you. Taking stock in your limited cognitive energy is important. And again, it's not dumping things, it's just writing down and prioritizing what's more important, like answering a child's question, and then the phone rings. and then the doorbell rings, and there's the dog or the cat, and you want to write, and maybe you have to answer an email or a stack of emails. It all deserves a response, all of it. But for me, not all at once. And I prioritize and I write it down so I don't lose any of it in the process. Because I will probably forget it if I don't write it down. Number 5, relying on a safety person. Who is the safety person? The safety person is a person you trust, someone you spend time with, and has a basic understanding of MS and your cognitive pitfalls. And this understanding is in advance, because when your mental connections are fogged up, I find that it's really difficult, if not impossible, to describe the mental jam at that point, unless in advance that person, that safety person, already knows you have MS and has maybe supported you in a similar difficult moment. They understand why maybe you're fatigued, why maybe you're slurring your words, why you're word switching. Hopefully I haven't been doing that too much during this presentation. Why you easily seem to be forgetting previously taken for granted information, such as names, facts, locations. They understand why you are mentally stuck. Their goal should be to make you calm, safe, cooled off maybe, until things click back for you mentally. They fill in your cognitive blanks without embarrassment or danger to you or anyone else. I want to share one simple example of this from the first book that I wrote, Facing the Cognitive Challenges of MS. And this was a simple situation at a family gathering, and I didn't see it coming. But because my wife, Terry, is one of my safety people, safety person, she understood what was happening, and she didn't have to call it out. She just helped me get through it. I'm just going to read for just a little bit out loud. Fortunately for me, Terry is attuned to my weakened condition or when my mind is locked out of the moment. She calmly notes my difficulties and avoids drawing attention to the impediment, while giving me the safe mental space to clear my puzzlement. Knowing that I feel more capable with a safety person, I can then focus on A, accepting the difficulty, B, better understanding what is occurring, and finally, C, learning to cope with it. This simple ABC method is not shared as a means to ignore MS, but to remove any fear and learn that you have more to gain by graciously moving forward with your life. When MS plays the role of rude, permanent guest in your life, it is helpful to rely on the simple ABC method. It is a path. The A also reminds me to apologize for my mental stumbles rather than have friends or family be uncomfortable with my awkward lapses. When Terry and I sat down for a holiday dinner with a large group of friends, I addressed the wife of a close friend as Jamie. Since we're all sitting at the same table with several of the friends, they all clearly heard me. Jamie. Terry grabbed my arm and with a forgiving smile she leaned into me. "You mean Kathy, not Jamie," she whispered. My eyes remained fixed on my plate and silverware as I suddenly recalled that I hadn't seen Jamie in 15 years, since her divorce from Travis. He had been married to Kathy for a couple years, and she was sitting across the table from me, averting my gaze. A slice of turkey had just landed on my plate, resting under a blanket of gravy, flanked by green beans and a warm dinner roll. It was so sad that I've come to envy a dead turkey, but I wanted to hide with it under the mountain of mashed potatoes. My brain must have known that I hadn't mentioned or seen Jamie in 20 years, but I was unaware of the word switching. Terry has mentioned these instances to me in an effort to show the frequency and the innocence of the misspoken word, but this unintentionally stung others. It is even more awkward when no one feels comfortable enough to point out one of my verbal switches, thinking it is best to just not mention it. Our group of friends was silently forgiving, since I was quick to accept the switching of names and apologize for the embarrassing miscue. A great insult, confusion, and possibly a food fight were avoided thanks to my safety person. Phew. And this, for me, has not been an isolated incident, but with a safety person, for example, my wife, Terry, damage is corrected and I move on. In conclusion, like exercise, I suggest learning to cope with cognitive challenges is personal. I encourage you to learn cognitive coping strategies from others who have been there and done that, as well as tips and tricks from the medical providers and informed MS websites. I am not a doctor. I'm just a guy with MS who wants people to share what they have learned about coping with cognitive challenges and disability. These are not obvious impediments, as I started in the beginning talking about. They're not as obvious as some physical impediments where they may be marked by you're holding a cane or a wheelchair, or you're using a handicapped parking placard. But these stealth cognitive impediments can confound, delay, and obscure our thoughts, memories, and pieces of our dignity. I take MS very seriously, and I encourage you to do the same and expect the same, especially from the medical providers who are caring for you. MS cognitive symptoms, the stealth symptoms, can be surprising and confusing and confounding. Where appropriate for yourself, expect a cognitive assessment. Ask for it, along with searching out and welcoming coping strategies that make sense for you. In my prior presentation, I shared vital resources, books, publications that support this discussion, and I'm asking maybe Kelsey or the Rocky Mountain MS Center folks to share again those pieces of information. I appreciate your time and thank you for being mindful of cognitive challenges. Take care of yourself.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey. And we will include those resources in your presentation handout today. Thanks for taking the time with us today.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gingold. And now I'd like to introduce Kelsey Morrow. Kelsey is the fabulous education manager for the Rocky Mountain MS Center, and I'd like to extend a huge thanks to Kelsey for all of her amazing work to bring us today's Education Summit. Kelsey, will you please join me to talk a bit about the feedback from the evaluation surveys?
Thanks, Carrie. And I want to say thank you to everyone who has joined us today, both in person and virtually. We really appreciate you guys showing up and spending your time with us on a Saturday morning. And I just want to talk a little bit about our evaluation surveys. Again, we appreciate the time that you guys spend filling those out. We look through these responses after every event. We use the comments and the feedback to make improvements on future programming. There's also space to suggest future topics of interest. I bring these to our education task force to help design all of the programming that you'll see for the next year. As a thank you, we are doing a drawing for 2 $25 Visa gift cards. So if you fill yours out and you leave your contact information on the back, you'll be entered into that drawing, which will take place next week. And now we're going to take a 10-minute break so you guys can use that time to get up, stretch, fill out those evaluations if you'd like. Or check out the exhibit hall. We'll post a link to the survey in the chat for those online as well. It'll be in a follow-up email. And you can also submit your questions during the day. If you're in person, you can submit your questions on an index card. I'll come around and collect them. Or online, you can just submit them through the chat. So thank you guys. We'll take a 10-minute break now. It's 10:05. We'll meet back at 10:15.